Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? My name is Denonu, and I'm the man with black privilege. And in this video here, we're going to be talking about Endgame, the latest Avengers movie. I made one video talking about it before, which is just giving my overall impressions on the video. But I wanted to wait until everybody kind of, had their 2 cents and things like that, and waited to see the movie before I just pretty much gave my opinions and spoilers and all that good stuff. So I'm not gonna go scene by scene. I guess I could do that, but I know if I did that, this video is probably gonna be like 2 hours long. So I'm just gonna talk mainly about the characters, not necessarily the plot of the movie, but I may give my opinions on that as well. If certain things pop in my head while I'm talking during this video. But characters right out the gate, I like how they did Tony Stark. It felt kind of rushed during the 5 years later jump, but it makes sense story-wise, so I can understand why they did it. You have to have him, let's say, have a child person, because normally in stories it's like, okay, what else can you do? You've taken a guy was super egotistical, you made him guilty, you made him feel bad about the things and the decisions that he'd done. You've had him try to, I guess, redeem himself from those decisions, and then it's like, okay, what would he lose at the end of the day? I mean, outside of it was either them aging him, giving him a kid and giving him different character values, so to speak. Well, not character value. Well, yeah, a little bit of different values. Changing his responsibilities, I should say, or changing what his reasons are for fighting Thanos and everything like that. So it's either do that or have Pepper get killed during the snap. And if you kill her during the snap, you can't have her as rescue at the end of the movie. You can't make any ongoing stuff involving her character, so it is what it is on that one. Big change, like it. It's definitely understandable. One thing that people can always agree to is when people hurt animals in movies, aka John Wick, people all jumped on his side when they killed his dog. The only thing that comes in second to is killing kids. So if him, when Steve and everybody else was like, look, let's do this whole time travel thing, and he was like, look, man, like I got a kid now, I can't, I don't want to do that. Or when he, agreed to it and went back to Steve Rogers and he was like, yo, look, this is cool and all, but like my kid comes first. That's something everybody can relate to who has kids, so it makes more sense. Plus, his daughter was mad cute in the movie, and and they just made her adorable as hell. So that was a win on both ones. It's kind of playing on the audience's heartstrings. As far as Captain America, I thought they were gonna do a kind of PTSD type thing, because if you go back into the first trailer, it's probably a scene that was cut out of the movie, but they showed him in that little group council thing, and I think the scene that they had in the trailer was him as he was just starting to go to those groups, whereas the one scene that we got in the movie was him after he's been there for a few years. So I wish that they'd have kept the whole angry PTSD, Steve Rogers in there, because I thought that was going to be a thing in the movie, like by him failing, and letting Thanos get the snap, that they were going to kind of take his character in a way of like, he doesn't feel like he's worthy to be Captain America anymore, or he doesn't, think that he can be a superhero anymore, or a hero rather, and he had to come to terms with that. And then by the end of the movie, he straps on the shield, and that he gets his resolve back, kind of like what they did with Thor. But it didn't happen like that in the movie. It's not bad with what they had with his character, but I think with him, Captain America was the one character who, I guess you didn't see him change as much as like Tony Stark and things like that, because they didn't really change his resolve. His whole thing was like, okay, it was all about the mission for him. Let's bring everybody back, you know, like, because I don't know what I'm gonna do, you know. So it makes a whole lot of sense, and that was so he was pretty much driven, but they didn't really change anything about him that I would see. I thought it was gonna do a little bit more. One character that they did change. Everybody else pretty much stayed the same. Hawkeye became angrier, needed to vent his outlet and frustrations on somebody. I like what they did with him. Wish they'd have showed it a little bit more. I would love to see like a Jeremy Renner Ronin movie of just him going around killing people and somehow making that work. Don't know if that's going to become a series. Maybe that's another reason why they did the 5-year jump. A lot of the characters are getting their either ongoing series, like Loki. That's why he disappeared in the movie. That's gonna explain like, oh, where was he been when he jumped, you know? So they're gonna do a series with him. Scarlet Witch, and I think Vision got their own show coming out. So a lot of these characters in the movies are getting their own streaming TV shows and stuff like that. So I would love to see Hawkeye get, get shown some love. I know he got some love in this movie, but he's always like the Aquaman of the Avengers. But he is like an utter beast, when it comes to things that he does in the comic book. Same thing for Black Widow. Like, a lot of people who don't know the comic books watch the movies and think, oh, Black Widow, why is she even there? All she does is shoot guns. Like, Black Widow is a motherfucking beast. If you ever read her comic book, she goes toe to toe with people with superpowers and wrecks their shit on a daily basis. Like, for those of you who don't know, I think she fought Daredevil and whooped his ass. So that puts, that tells you what level, what kind of level she's on. And I'm not talking about Netflix Daredevil, who's nice, don't get me wrong, but he's not comic book Matt Murdock. Matt Murdock from the comic books is another beast. He's like almost a little bit under Iron Fist when it comes to what he can do. And she went toe to toe with him and kind of, fought him, and they were both messed up at the end, but she came out on top, if I remember right. Same thing for Iron Man. She had a thing in the comic books where she played his emotions and stuff like that, and got close to him to disable his suit and stuff like that. So she's definitely a character that I wish that they would do more with. Apparently she has her own solo movie coming out, but given the fact that she dies in this movie, it's like, okay, well, who cares about a prequel movie with Black Widow? Like, give me Budapest the movie. That's what I want to see. I don't know about you guys, but I want to see Budapest. I want to see what they're referencing in all these movies. That would be more of an interesting movie to me. Like, I want to see like since Jeremy Renner and Scarlett Johansson have so much good chemistry there when they're on screen. Like, I want a whole movie of that, kind of like how she was with Captain America and Winter Soldier. I don't know if they can make that happen or if they're even willing to go that far, but I would love to see that. Or maybe have they had a comic book storyline back in the day where she kind of had a booty call with Winter Soldier during, like, I want to say like the 70s or 80s in the comics. I would love to see that, on screen. Maybe do a movie of that. Maybe they're both sent to take down the same target and they have a booty call moment and then they just get split up. Somehow make that into like a three act part structure movie. They can do a lot back in the day and prequel wise, so they're not limited to just what they've said in the MCU if they wanted to do that. Hulk, let me talk about him before I jump on Thor. Hulk as a character, I don't know what they were doing. I like I guess this is the movie version of Professor Hulk. That's cool and all, but the only thing that's missing from his arc is, like, they never had any kind of redemption moment. It's like his scene got cut from the movie. The scene where he's sitting down at the diner and everything, I guess it's cool for laughs and stuff like that. It introduces you to how he is, but he just pretty much explains, like, oh, I had to come to terms with the Hulk, and I was, like, for years I thought he was something that needed to be cured, and then he merged, it's like that whole scene that he's talking about. Why didn't we get that in the movie to explain his character? And if you're not gonna have it, fine. That's not even the part that I'm nitpicking about, as far as like why I don't think they kind of, I'm not gonna say they messed up, because it definitely fits in the movie. But one thing I think there was a scene, or it's just my moviegoer and comic book side is like, okay, you're missing the final conclusion to his character. Either it happened off screen or it's not in the movie. And the one thing that it's missing from his whole storyline from movie to movie ever since, let's say, Ragnarok and this and Age of Ultron, is he never got that conclusion. I wanted to see him rage out and destroy shit at the end. Even if it's just for like 5 minutes, well maybe not 5 minutes, because you had a lot going on in that action scene, so to be true. But have like one moment of like, let's say he thought he cured the Hulk, you know, and he thought he was cool, but let's say when he saw Thanos, Hulk, you know, inner Hulk became inner Sakura and got super pissed. And he raged out even more and became, you know, let's say Savage Hulk. They can't really do, a lot of people be like, oh, I want to see World Breaker Hulk. They can't do World Breaker Hulk in the movies because he's nowhere near that strong. None of the Avengers are what they are in the comic book. So people who love that, yeah, chuck that idea and throw it in the ocean because it's not going anywhere. I would love to see Savage Hulk, kind of like, you know, during, you know, what he did during the Avengers. Show him, like, even if it's coming at Thanos and just like punching him a couple times, but let's say Thanos somehow gets the jump on him some kind of way and knocks him down, kind of like how he did Captain Marvel, you know. Or have Hulk do something that, let's say, that saved the moment. Let's say they needed one big feat of strength. One thing that I think that they kind of did, but it didn't come across as much, is I wish the Avengers facility was, let's say, deeper underground. Kind of like how they did, if you guys remember back with the Avengers movie, kind of like how they did the first scene in that, where that shield facility was underground. That way, when Thanos bombarded the base, you know, Hulk had to hold up, like, you know, let's say he had to rage out even more and hold up like tons and tons and tons of Earth, you know, kind of like what he did in the comic books. During Secret Wars, there was a point where I think, what did they say? It was like a 1,000,000-ton mountain or something fell on all the Avengers and all the heroes that were there, and Hulk was the only one that was holding it up. You know, have Hulk, you know, give Hulk a reason to be in your movie. You know, like, if you're gonna have the Hulk in there, show him some shit that only Hulk can do. And that, I think, was the problem, because by them having, and I'm gonna jump on this later when I talk about things I kind of don't like with the MCU versus the comic books. I hate how, well, let me explain my previous thought. By them having Bruce Banner and Tony Stark, it feels like everything that they need science-wise or research-wise or whatever is all Tony Stark. Tony Stark, Tony Stark, Tony Stark. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Iron Man. Iron Man is my favorite superhero ever since I fell out of favor with Spider-Man a few years ago when Marvel tried to do that bullshit. But it's not all him. In the comic books, they explain the differences between, let's say, the smartest people on the planet. Like, Bruce Banner in the comic books is better with radiation, gamma stuff, mutations, that kind of stuff that wraps him up with the Incredible Hulk. He is the top guy on the planet when it comes to that kind of sort of stuff. Tony Stark, he's more of that inventor, that engineer, that, oh, I have a result that I want. How do I get there? What machinery do I need in order to, what do I have to build in order to get there? You know, like when they had to kill the Phoenix, he was like, okay, well, what can I build that's gonna kill the Phoenix? So he made like this giant Phoenix Buster armor. You know, like that's his thing, is coming up with those ideas. Reed Richards, his thing is pretty much a little bit of everything. But whenever you have some cosmic stuff or like other dimension type stuff, that's the guy that you go to. You know, or if like you'll be like, look, I need some help on something and I need one of the big brains on the planet to talk to, that's the guy you go to, is Reed Richards. So they all have their own various things. In the MCU, you don't have that. It's all Tony Stark. You know, and it's fun, I get that, but it's like his ability to solve science problems is just like ridiculous. It's like plot hole armor, you know, in like a movie or something like that. It's like, okay, what do we need to drive the plot forward? Okay, the main character can do it. It's on fan fiction levels of bullshit. You know, like when they were talking about time travel, it was like they didn't even have a scene of him trying to figure it out. It was just like, oh, you know, let me just plug this into a computer, hit a button, and bam. Oh, guess what? I figured shit out. Like what? You know, like they couldn't do that back in Avengers HQ. Why did they need him? You know, I get it. It's his computer, his algorithms, but like they didn't even show him trying to figure shit out. It was just like, oh, let me just take this USB, plug it into my laptop, and run a program. Like it didn't show him like building the program, trying things out. Like it. That's one thing I like about Iron Man is even when it comes to the comic books, and even more so with the movies, when he needed to build his first, you know, what did they call it in Iron Man 1? Mark 2? The one that he made in the movie, not the first one, but the, you know, that got him out of the cave, but the second one, when he first put the prototype together, you showed him building it step by step in different scenes of the movie, testing things out, things like that. I wish that they'd have had a scene, even if it was like a 2-minute montage scene of him trying things out and failing, kind of like what's that movie with Hugh Jackman? What was it called? Swordfish. There was a scene in Swordfish where Hugh Jackman had to put together like a virus program, and granted, it's nothing how you like how you code or how you really make viruses, but they had a montage scene of him trying different combinations and stuff like that and failing over and over and over again until he figured it out. I wish that it was like that. You know, they had a little minute scene of Tony Stark trying to figure out the time travel, killing himself to do it, and then he finally does it, and then it would give more weight to him, you know, discovering it. Because according to what they showed, I don't see why Bruce Banner couldn't have done the same thing. I know Bruce Banner said in the movie, like, oh, this isn't my area of expertise. Well, it's not Tony's either. So, you know, technically it's nobody's. I guess you could say theories, but it's nobody's area of expertise because nobody's done it yet. So he wouldn't just instantly know what to do and just solve it. You know, it's completely baseless, doesn't work. Granted, you needed to get the plot where it needs to go, so it is what it is. I mean, I'm not going to give Marvel a pass on that. It's they explain the time travel stuff, that I have no problem with. It's just how they got there. It was shit. All right. Thor. Thor is very well in this movie. I loved what they did with Thor. It makes perfect sense. I know probably a lot of people don't like Fat Thor, but I thought he was hilarious. And this is coming from somebody who's never seen The Big Lebowski, but I know of it based on the internet and memes and all that kind of sort of stuff. I like the fact that because they could have just kept Thor angry and kept him the same, but they didn't, you know, from the last movie. It kind of broke him, and it makes a whole lot of sense is that he had the chance to kill Thanos and he chose to go for the chest and not the arm, and everybody died. So he has that weight on his conscience, and it's like he's just a man like anybody else. Granted, he's, you know, Asgardian, you know, super strong, got all these powers and everything, but he's at the lowest point he's ever been. You know, family died, his country died, his people died, and then Thanos killed half of what was left. So it kind of makes a whole lot of sense. You know, it's like, what else does he have? Which is nothing. You know, so he would be all messed up emotionally, and I'm glad that they kind of make that change. And a lot of people seen the movie and probably was thinking like, oh man, Asgardians can't get fat. You know, like like why is Thor super fat? Like he's supposed to be ripped. Like, do you not know about Volstagg? you know, Asgardians, you know, they get fat just like anybody else. You know, they can get ripped and get skinny again like anybody else, and sometimes a little bit quicker. But it's just, that's something they explain in the comic books, because at the end of the day, they're just super strong people, I guess you can say. They're not really, you know, gods or nothing like that. They just got high-end technology that seems like magic, and there's just people. You know, they live really long, they grow old, and they die just like anybody else. It just takes like thousands and thousands and thousands of years. But as far as their mental states is just like anybody else. You know, they have ups, they have downs. I think they had a period in the comics recently where Volstagg basically tried to save a bunch of kids, and the kids got killed, and he was the only one that's left. And the only reason that he didn't die, he I forget what had happened in the comic, but he was trying to stop something from killing the kids, and he got in between the kids and him. And what, like, it was some kind of like big energy beam or something, or something fell on the kids, and he tried to take the hit. The problem was he's Asgardian, so he lived, but the kids weren't. They were like elves or goblins or something, and they got killed. And that kind of put him into like a really pissed rage, where he picked up an alternate dimension version of Mjolnir, and became kind of like an evil version of himself for a little bit, until they had to kind of snap him out of it and stuff like that. And he fought so hard that he just went on a killing spree, and he fought so hard that, because he's a really big fat guy, he fought so hard that he became skinny and became ripped before they could snap him out of it. But yeah, Asgardians are just like anybody else, and I love his character art throughout all of Endgame. Even loved the scene of him meeting his mom when they went back in time, and he kind of had to get things off of his chest. And, you know, for those of you who have moms, if you have a loving mom, they're like the one person that you can say some real shit to. At least my mom was. I could come to my mom with damn near anything, you know, about this, you know, this chick I'm dating, or anything on my mind, anything that I'm going through in life. I could always win to her and stuff like that. So it makes a whole lot of sense for him to talk to his mom. The only thing that didn't make sense to me is, like, if that was me, I'd have told her that she was gonna die. But given her dialogue and stuff, it's kind of like she either didn't want to know, or that she kind of already knew what was gonna happen for her. So it kind of had to play out. So it is what it is. But outside of that, those are the major character stuff that really I really enjoyed with the movie. I didn't really have a problem with anybody outside of the Hulk. The Hulk just felt, like I said, it felt like they didn't complete his thing. You know, it felt like you had Act 1, you had Act 2, you had half of an Act 3, and it's like nothing else. I read an article, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I read an article online saying that when Marvel wanted to push Captain Marvel, the character, that her scene at the end of Endgame, where she comes in and destroys the spaceship and stuff like that, that was supposed to be Hulk that did that, not her. And they had to kind of give her a spot in the movie, and those are the two shots that they showed of her fighting Thanos and her destroying the ship, because they had to give her something. And that's why she wasn't in like the rest of the movie. I don't know if that's true or not, but it would make sense, because she's kind of in the movie for 2 seconds, and it's like, oh, yes, I'm going out to space, and then she dips out. You know, it makes a whole lot of sense, I guess, you know, because like she said, the Avengers aren't everywhere, so it makes sense from a story perspective. But it's like, she didn't have to be in this movie at all. I will say this though, if I had to compare her performance in this versus her movie, I like her better in this. She's a straightforward asshole character, but that one scene with Spider-Man was pretty decent. That showed some lighter character, and that's exactly how she is in a comic book. She is an asshole dick character. I personally don't like that. I like that better when she was Miss Marvel, you know, coming out of, let's say, the 70s, 80s, and the 90s. I've never liked the new Captain Marvel bullshit that they've been pushing in Marvel comic books. So I knew I wasn't really gonna like her character in this. And when I seen her movie, it was just like, you know, still not feeling it, right? Because it's like you have a bland character, and she's not giving off any kind of character or likable traits. You know, at least with Thor, like you could say in this movie, okay, he's Fat Thor, he's arrogant, he's drunk, whatever, right? But he still has some type of character. Captain Marvel in her movie was just kind of there. And I guess, granted, that would work for like a Black Ops military-esque soldier type character. And that's, I guess you could say she was a soldier in that movie. I mean, she didn't act like a soldier in that movie, but um, let's just say she is, and so it makes sense for her movie. In this one, I thought they were going to make her a little bit different because now this is like, let's say, what, 15, 20 years later since her movie. So she's grown into her personality, you know, and remembering her memories and everything. So she had 20 years to develop a personality. And I was kind of hoping that they were going to show that a little bit. And they did a little bit. I mean, I will say that. Her scenes weren't bad. I mean, I can't look at them and be like, okay, they're bad. She was just kind of straightforward, like she was gonna solve the problem, you know, like, oh, let's go kill Thanos. And then that just kind of, you know, she doesn't have the power to do that. And I'm glad that they showed that at the end of the movie. One thing that doesn't make sense is, to me, I don't know if they changed how the gauntlet works, but she had a moment with Thanos had the gauntlet, and she came in, destroyed the ship, and she was fighting Thanos. And it was one scene where, like, she was laying into him, and Thanos tried to hit her, and like nothing, and it didn't phase her. Like, she took it DBZ style, and like, then he took the Power Stone off of the gauntlet and then punched her. And I get it, it's cool, but what doesn't make sense is, like, why did he have to take the Power Stone out of the gauntlet? You're already wearing the gauntlet, so you already have all of the power that's contained within it and in the universe. So why did you have to take off the Power Stone? Because that's going to make it weaker, and then hit her with it, you know? And in hindsight, why was she even so strong to take his first punch to the face DBZ style? She's not that strong, you know? But hey, you know, that's like saying, okay, I have all the power in the universe, but I'm gonna punch you and you're gonna take it. So that means she's just as strong, because that's how physics works. You know. That's just the way it is. If she can take that first punch, then she's just as strong as the Infinity Gauntlet, not just the Power Stone. You know, but the entire thing. It all kind of feeds together. If you guys have ever seen Marvel's little diagram of the Infinity Stones, the reason that they get put in the gauntlet is because to allow all of their powers and abilities to feed through each other to make each one of them stronger. That's why you have to put it in the gauntlet to begin with. Otherwise, you could just have the stones in your pocket or in your hand and just use them. You know, makes a whole lot of sense that way. And if Thanos with the gauntlet couldn't punch her and knock her back, then Thanos would just the Power Stone in his left hand shouldn't have been able to do it either. So granted, I'm glad that they did do it because I would hate this, you know, this movie a little bit more if you just had Captain Marvel come in there and she was the end all to the problem, you know, the end all be all to the problem. I would hate that, because in the comic book she's not that strong, and I know I keep referencing the comic books, and no, the movies don't have to be like that, but you can't write a good story and have a Superman-esque character that could just solve all the problems. Otherwise, it would have been like Justice League when Superman showed up and beat down Steppenwolf. You know, once he showed up and he just bitch smacked Steppenwolf and mollywopped him, there was literally like, okay, like there was no threat at the end of the movie, just none. Like once Superman came in there, it was like, oh well, he's gonna win. You know, it's bad storytelling. Well, I guess not. I guess you can't say bad. That's relative. I guess it's a different type of story. And usually most people, they like underdog stories, so they want to see their hero struggle, fail, and then come out of it at the end to succeed, aka Rocky. You know, everybody likes those Rocky type stories because that's the kind of characters you want to root for. If somebody was super strong to begin with, and let's say the Hulk or Captain Marvel just came down and just bitch smacked Thanos and that was the end of him, then there'd be no drama there. There'd be no connection with the audience. There would be nothing. So I'm glad they didn't do that with Captain Marvel. Really am. Loved all of the references in this movie. As a fan of the MCU, I've seen every movie that they've done, and then some. I've seen all of the TV shows. I'm currently watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. right now, about, you know, because that's starting back up. I've seen all the Netflix stuff. As a fan of all of that, I loved all the references. Got them all. Loved every minute of it. I don't feel like it hurt the movie in the slightest. And by them, I guess, ending the movie the way that they did, it's a good send-off piece to what they've accomplished, throughout the past years. And that's pretty much what they did. Is they came into Hollywood, they kicked the door open and said, look, Marvel has the biggest dick in the room. Y'all can't do nothing about it. And they changed Hollywood. Hopefully it's for the better, but we won't know until in the future. But they definitely did make a big impact that changes the rest of Hollywood and how they see superhero movies. Because now superhero movies are the biggest thing in the water, and I'm hoping that that Endgame beats out Avatar, and I'm hoping this stays on top for like 20 years. Because then that'll show Hollywood, like, okay, now we need to respect other mediums and not just think that they're bullshit. Because that's how they used to perceive comic book movies back in the day. Usually the big money movies were drama movies or action movies. And that's how it was for like 20 or 30 years. Titanic, or like Terminator 2, those kind of movies were like the biggest things out there. And comic book movies or anything from like that wasn't from like a major movie franchise, it was just thought of like, oh, that's just whatever, we're not going to take that seriously. Look at all the early comic book movies, Blade. Hell, if I want to go back to the early ones, look at what they did with Batman and Robin. I think the movies before that were decent. Look what they did with Superman back in the day with Christopher Reeves. They were done very well for their time, but I think Superman was the movie that they kind of had the most respect with. And then as you got into his sequels, they kind of was like, it's whatever. Batman the same way. The original Batman movie, the Batman 89, great movie. They put a lot of effort into that. And then as the sequels went on, it was like, And then Batman and Robin came out, and that kind of killed the genre. That killed comic book movies until I think, I want to say until Blade came out. Because you had Spawn come out, and then it was Blade. Spawn wasn't really a big hit, but when Blade came out, they sold it, and that's the thing, they sold it as a vampire movie, not a comic book movie. Because if they'd have sold it as a comic book movie, they'd have probably never got anywhere with it. So Blade was kind of like that made tons of money when it came out. And then you had, X-Men and Spider-Man, and that started, the train, so to speak. That became, the X-Men movies made tons of money, the Spider-Man movies made tons of money, or at least Spider-Man 1 and 2. I think 3 made a lot of money, but it was just trashed and everything, so that kind of got the ball moving. And then when Marvel came out with Iron Man, that kind of knocked the door off the hinges, so to speak. So, and it's been an ongoing money train for them since. They had their flops, their ups and their downs, but things have been progressively going up for like ever since like Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3. And Iron Man 3, I think it made over $1 billion. So that was a monetary success, but they did get panned for that whole Mandarin bullshit that they tried to pull. So as a movie, Endgame is kind of referencing a lot. I wish they would have took it a step further. Honestly, I would have loved to seen in that scene when Falcon was like on your left and everybody showed up. I would have loved to seen everybody there and have like the Netflix crew and like Coulson, Melinda May, and Quake from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the TV show. Or at least the whole team from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Let's say you have to show them for a second. You don't have to do in-depth showing them fight or anything like that, but just have a scene where you make a point to show the Netflix team and the television team, just to kind of seal the deal. Because technically, yes, they're in the same universe, even though a lot of people don't care about them. Hell, I think Coulson came from the movies, and they written him into the TV show and into the comics. You even had Samuel L. Jackson and certain characters that were in the movies show up in that TV show in the first season, to kind of cement its legacy. The Netflix stuff is kind of like, yeah, they mention it in passing, but none of the Netflix stuff carries over to the main movies. This would have been a perfect opportunity to be like, oh shit, we didn't forget about you. You know what I'm saying? We recognize what you're doing. But they probably couldn't do, at least the Netflix stuff they probably can't do. There's a lot of legal rights and stuff involving all of that stuff, so even they can't use a lot of those characters for other things, at least not yet, without getting sued. So it's, I want to see the Netflix people, but at the same time, as a company, unless they was like, fuck it, let them sue us, we don't give a fuck, we're Disney, we're Marvel, you know, unless they wanted to do that, which most companies don't have the balls to do. I can understand why they don't put the Netflix people on there, but they don't got no excuse for the, you know, for Coulson and the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. crew, because I think Disney owns a part of like ABC or something like that. Unless they have some kind of legal reason why they can't do that, then I would have loved to have seen that in there. Outside of the references, I like the callbacks to the older movies. When they went back in time, and instead of Doctor Strange being there, it was the Ancient One. Because that's something I thought of. Because I was like, wait, you know, because I was thinking, like, if they go back in time, Doctor Strange, you know, isn't going to be the Sorcerer Supreme. Because I think his movie takes place, I want to say, like a few years before Infinity War. So if they're going back like 10 years, it's not going to be him. And I guess a lot of people didn't expect that, you know, because they just assumed it was going to be Doctor Strange. So I thought that was a really nice throwback in her, like, knocking Bruce Banner outside of the Hulk. I thought that was done very well. The only character that I would see I wish could have done a little bit more that they kind of didn't do anything with was Loki. You know, they kind of showed him a couple times, and then he disappeared with the Tesseract, you know? And I know they're going to have a whole TV show with him, so it kind of makes sense. Like, everybody's going to be like, oh, what happened to Loki? So they're going to answer that question. I just wish we got to see a little bit more of him in the actual movie. Since I really do like his character. But then again, he died in the last movie, so... you know, you can't have him coming to the future like you did Thanos and kind of, you know, be in there too. I mean, that's kind of weird. Something else that kind of bothered me story-wise, I know I mentioned it before when I was talking about Tony Stark and the time travel stuff and all of that. It's like, it would have made a whole lot of sense. I just thought of a way they could have fixed that. Have Tony not, or have Tony try to figure it out, but can't do it. And let's say he has to go to like Wakanda, talk to Shuri and Bruce Banner, and they all come together and figure it out. That would have made a whole lot more sense. Then I would have had no qualms about that, because Wakanda, they're more technologically advanced than everybody else on the planet. At least in the comic book they are. I know in the movies, maybe Tony Stark may be on par with them, but you know, I would assume Wakanda still has better stuff than him, since their power suit, like with the Black Panther costume and stuff, is still probably just as good as Tony's and stuff like that. So it's like, I would assume if anybody was on his level or maybe above him, it would be the Wakandans, you know, because that's pretty much how it is in the comic books too. Tony Stark is innovative for what he does and for what he can create, but at the same time, it's like the Wakandans have all of the high-end tech and the money and the resources to put behind something. Tony Stark just has him and his company. So that you're talking about one company versus literally the richest man on the planet. Because that vibranium is worth every country's, like, all the money of every other country on the planet, and then some. Like, it's like, I forget the amount of what it is in comic books. Somebody broke it down years ago, but he's the richest man on the planet, bar none. You know, like comparing the Batman, Tony Stark, whatever. He's at the top of that list. So he has the resources of pretty much an entire planet if he wanted to throw at a problem. Like when Black Panther has a problem and he can't solve it, you know the world is messed up. So I wish that they'd included them some kind of way, because I feel like a lot of scenes, I would love to see a director's cut of this movie, because it feels like a lot of scenes were cut out or that they couldn't put in because it was already a 3-hour movie. So if they ever come out with like a director's cut and have it be like a 2-part DVD of like a 6-hour movie, I would love to see that. A few things that I thought that they were going to bring everybody back. Let me just jump on the story for a second. I thought that they were going to bring everybody back, YouTube. I really did. I thought by the end of this movie, they were going to snap their fingers, everybody was going to come back, and that would be that. or like the universe will get reset and we go back to like, they go back in time and something changes, so they create like a divergent timeline, or they go back and change the future, and let's say the MCU as we've learned and watched through the movies doesn't exist anymore and it changes. So let's say they go back in time before, let's say Iron Man 1, and they change something. Whatever they change has a butterfly effect through everything else, and when they go back to the present, what they remember gets changed, it gets warped, and now you have a different MCU that you can talk movies and explore and, different ideas that they can do. But no, they're sticking with this ending. They're just gonna be like, hey, look, it is what it is. Everybody got brought back, but Black Widow's dead. A few other people are dead, and everybody's gonna have this 5-year gap that has me incredibly curious, because that makes no kind of sense. But they have half the universe that's lost 5 years. Like, how are they gonna adjust to that? How are the people in the world are gonna treat them, or how are they gonna deal with that? How's the other half gonna deal with, everybody coming back and missing those 5 years? I guess we all have to wait until Spider-Man Homecoming, but I'm not liking what I see in the trailers for that either. It's like, I like everything that they're talking about the multiverse. I love Mysterio. I love a lot of the things that it's like, oh, okay, I wonder where they're taking this. But then once you get to like the high school stuff and them just coming back after 5 years and just going back to school like nothing ever happened, it's like, if you're gonna do that with your story and just make it be like, oh, well, we're just gonna go back to school and pretend like nobody ever got snapped, why even have them lose the 5 years? You know what I'm saying? It's like, why even make it a thing if you're not gonna do anything with it? And maybe they are. Like I said, we all gotta wait until we see Spider-Man, not Spider-Man Homecoming, Far From Home. We all gotta wait until we see Far From Home to see what they're gonna do. But honestly, I'm loving what I'm seeing so far. But by them not, let's say, resetting their universe, they're making a statement that says, no, look, our universe can grow. That's one thing that you always have in the comic books that they have to kind of bullshit reasons for, because in the comic books they'll have story arcs. Let's say like you have a writer do a run of, let's say, like Iron Man, let's say like Matt Fraction. I know he written one of the runs a few years ago that I really did like, and he'll write a story arc for, let's say, like 30 or 50 books of Iron Man, or comic books of Iron Man, tell a few story arcs in there and things like that. But once his run is over, and let's say another writer comes in, they normally retcon Iron Man, or any character for that matter. When a writer comes in, they want to kind of make the character their own, so to speak. So instead of, let's say, picking up the story where like, okay, Matt Fraction's run ended on this, and I'm going to pick up where he left off and continue the character in a different story, they're just going to be like, no, fuck that, scratch that. And now Iron Man is like, okay, well, certain things carry over, but as far as like the character, his suit, whatever storylines that they had going, they usually drop all of that to create their own story. And that's what I don't like about it. Is usually when comic book, or when writers do that in the comic books, it always makes you think, or at least it makes me think. When I read like the newer stuff, I'll be like, well, Tony Stark wouldn't have did that because he still had, he did that 5 years ago. For instance, in that whole story arc with Matt Fraction, I think, well, not that one, but he's Iron Man. They build bigger and better suits, and then like when a new writer comes in, it's like, oh no, he lost this suit. It's like they do what they do with Metroid. If you ever played a Super Metroid game, or a Metroid game in general, not just Super Metroid, but like as the game progresses, you get better power. So at the end of the game, you're as strong as you're gonna be. Like at the end of Super Metroid, Samus has all of her abilities. She has the Hyper Beam, all of that good stuff. And then it's like in the next game, oh no, something happens where you lose all of your abilities and you got to start all over. They do that. That's what they do to comic book characters, and I hate that. Writers, if it's your job to be a writer, and now granted, I'm not a writer, so I've written fan fiction in my day, that's about it. But to me, if you're a writer, if that's the job you choose to do, then take some time and actually write shit. You know, don't just come in there and be like, oh I don't want to pick up where he left off, so I'm just gonna just fucking and do my own thing. Like, no, your job is a writer. And that's probably the one reason why I hate movies that do the same thing too. I hate when they have lazy writing in a movie, because it doesn't take time to write something good. It's just, if you're a good writer, you're a good writer. If you're a bad one, you're a shit one. You know, it's one of those things where if you give the writer time to create a story before you film it, then it's going to be decent. You look at any major film that came out, like let's say Christopher Nolan's Batman. You know, like, I wasn't the biggest fan of that, but I will say I love Batman Begins and I love The Dark Knight. I hated the way his trilogy ended. I think, you know, that Bane movie was some bullshit, but those first two movies, writing was on point. It was the shit. You know, it's when you have lazy writing, and I could say that about any media, movies, music, comics. You know, when you have lazy writing, it makes everything look bad, because usually all of those mediums is centered around the bad writing. It's not like a movie is probably the one medium where they can do it a little bit differently, because when a movie comes out, they can actually be like, look, our writing is bad, so let's give the audience good visuals, aka Michael Bay. You know, let's give some people some cool explosions, and if you like seeing cool explosions, you won't think about the story. You know, but when you have good writing and good explosions, you know, that's just like even better. You know, it just makes the movies so much better and so good that you want to go back and see it and stuff like that. Like with Endgame here, this movie had good writing. From the time the Russos came in, and even before that, their biggest thing with all of these movies and with the MCU in general is consistency and writing. So when they were writing probably Infinity War and Endgame and where they can take these characters, they're not looking at it and be like, look, we're gonna make a superhero slobber knocker, and just writing took a backseat. You know, they didn't do that. The only character that I see that Marvel did that with, and I'm not blaming the Russos for this, but the only character I see that they did that with is Captain Marvel. She's the only one that, just like in the comic books, with the recent runs in the past few years, they kind of shoehorned her in, and that's something I don't like. I wish that they'd have had more growth with her character. I don't mind the fact that she's there. Like I said, she's never been my favorite comic book character because she's a dick, but it's one of those things where I wish they'd have showcased her. Let's say had her movie after Endgame, and then have her in follow-up movies, the next Avengers movie after that, and she's on the new Avengers team, or whatever the next iteration of the Avengers is, with like Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Black Panther, and the rest of them. You know, would have had no problems. But by them like shoehorning her origin movie in there, and I guess you can say that was a prequel movie, so that's not really shoehorned. But the fact that you had Nick Fury in there, and that shoehorned a lot of S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff in there, and how he got certain things, so it shoehorned his aspect or his side of the story into the MCU, since he was there in the MCU. So they tried to answer a few questions and stuff. They tried to make her character seem like she's an Avenger when she's not. Like them having that scene at the end of the movie of when she was getting in the plane, or she was his inspiration for the Avenger Initiative, because her call sign for her pilot and her jet stuff was Avenger. Fucking bullshit. No, that's just playing on characters, or not characters' heartstrings, but the audience. You know, it's that's shoehorning that word in there to be like, oh, that's why he thought of it, and like, no, fuck no. Her call sign was something else in the comic books. I forget what it was. But it's just, they're just shoehorning that in there to kind of, hey, look, don't you want to tie it to Avengers? You know, I hate when movies and books and mediums do that, because it just, like I said, it's lazy writing. It's exactly what it is. If you want to make her, you know, an Avenger and stuff like that, that's cool. Do that organically. You know, don't shoehorn her whole story in and her character in to Endgame to make her be an Endgame. You know, because I didn't feel like her spot was earned in that movie. You know, I mean, it's cool that she was there. The whole female superhero shot was like I don't feel like that was shoehorned in. I feel like that was pandering to your audience and to females. So that's, I guess you could say that's cool, but it's kind of, I wish they did that a little bit more organically too. Like they all kind of just went to that same spot and just kind of posed like for no reason. But you know, it is like, it is what it is. But it's one of those things where I feel like if you're gonna bring in a different character, have that character be earned, because you have like the rest of the MCU that was set up to be a certain way and to be organic and to have ongoing storylines and consistency. And now you're saying, fuck all of that, I want to have my character in here. And it's like, I want to have her be the best. Like, no, it's like, you know, it's just like, why would you do that? And I think it's probably more on Marvel's end of things, not necessarily the Russos or the directors or the writers of Endgame, because it definitely feels like she was not meant to be a part of this movie. Like I said, she's only in like 2 scenes this whole movie, and it just doesn't seem like she's meant to be a part of it, because she's written out of the story and then she comes back in for 2 seconds and then she's gone again. So it feels like, it's like, okay, well, we have to show this character on screen, but we don't be like, you know, I'm not putting her in my movie, but I'm obligated to like to at least show her. That's what it feels like when it comes to only her character, though. Everybody else was fine. But I will say this, given all of that and her character and stuff and her shoehornness, if that's even a word, which I doubt, but given the fact that she's shoehorned in and stuff like that, I really do like the fact that even with that, they made a damn good movie. Like, you have some of the references and stuff like that I've already mentioned, but you've even had them try to bring in certain characters. Like, they had Jarvis from Agent Carter. A lot of people who probably seen the movie don't know who he is because he's never been in the MCU. When it comes to the movies, he's only in that short. That's why, you know, he's like, you know, the butler for Tony Stark's dad, you know, Jarvis. That's why in the Iron Man thing, he has the butler, but it's like an artificial intelligence named Jarvis. That's why they did that in the movies. In the comic books, Jarvis was the butler for Tony Stark. He was like, let's say, Alfred for Batman. Except it wasn't necessarily, he was Tony Stark's butler, I guess you can say that, but he was more of the Avengers Alfred, you know. The Avengers used to work out of a mansion in New York back in the day, so he was the person, he was like how Alfred maintains the Wayne Manor. He was like the butler for the Avengers mansion, so he was like the Alfred for the Avengers back in the day. So they had to kind of make that kind of sort of change with the when it came to the movies. But I like the fact that they at least acknowledged some part of the television side of things in the MCU. Granted, that's only because, I guess you can say, what's her name? Peggy Carter was a part of that. So it's like, I don't see why you couldn't at least have Coulson come back from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. You know, that bugs me. Like, I want to see, like I said, the main Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. team, you know, just show them. But like, Coulson was like a big part of the MCU. Like, he was in Captain Marvel, he was in Iron Man 1 and 2, he was in those end credit scenes that was leading into Thor. Like, he's been a part of it too, so it's like, why not, you know? But maybe they couldn't fit it in, contract, scheduling, all of that good stuff. Maybe they just couldn't make that happen, who knows? Something else I can talk about with the movie is a lot of people don't like Thanos in this movie. I'm not sure why. I guess they wanted the same kind of character development that you had in Infinity War. But I look at it like this: you can't do that. You had a whole movie about that big purple bastard. You know, that's what Infinity War was. That was his movie. They could give him character development. They could give him character growth and reasonings and stuff like that. But this movie was about the Avengers. That's why a lot of the screen time was about the main Avengers team. Them going back in time, saying different things, you know, getting those character moments like Captain America, you know, talking to himself during his fight about Bucky, or like Tony Stark meeting his dad, or Captain America at the end when he gets his life, you know, or I should say, when Captain America fucks up the timeline. But we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But it's one of those things where it can't be about Thanos. It's not his story. That's what Infinity War was for. This was about the conclusion and them stopping him, or resolving the conclusion that he did when he snapped his fingers. That's what the movie was about. So you still had to have him in there, but you can't have the movie focus on him anymore, because, like I said, you've already had that a movie. The previous movie was about him. So you just have to have him be a bad guy, and that's all I was expecting from him. The ending of the movie, really loved that ending scene. That ending fight scene was probably, outside of like Hulk not doing anything besides holding his broken arm, I thought that was kind of weak, but everything else about that ending fight scene was like, shoot, it was, my geek boner was strong. It was taking up the entire row in front of me when I was sitting in the theaters. And it's one of those things where that's probably the greatest superhero battle I've seen on film. And Civil War was hard to top, but like, and Infinity War, you had the scene on Titan with Iron Man and everybody else, but damn, the ending scene movie in this, man, it was on point. They did their damn thing. And like I said, they brought in all of the warriors, except the Netflix team and the TV show guys, but it's on point. Fighting was good. Everybody got their little moment. I figured Pepper was gonna get her rescue armor, since they teased a couple pictures on Twitter. I wish they'd have made it look like how it looks in the comics, but it is what it is. You had all of the ladies get their little shots, so it's like, it's whatever. Like I said, I can't fault them for doing that. That's just pandering to ladies, and that's kind of what Disney does. I mean, it panders to kids and women, so. But it was shot damn well. The cinematography was on point. The one thing I will say, that another thing that kind of bugged me, but it didn't really matter all that much, was they had the whole Spider-Man thing when he was doing the instant kill thing. And that was a callback to Homecoming when, he accidentally triggered that. But it made for a great funny scene. But and I loved it when I was watching it. But the one thing that bugged me about it afterwards was, I wish that they would have showcased his spider sense. Let's say, like, while he was getting jumped, instead of going into like instant kill and having the suit do everything and have him just holding onto the gauntlet, not, just screaming about how scared he is. I wish that they'd had a scene where like his spider sense kicked in and it showed you how agile and how powerful Spider-Man could be, because that's something we haven't seen yet in the MCU. Spider-Man is one of the top tier, I'm not gonna say power-wise in the comics, but when it comes to, like, let's say, he's not a super genius, so I can't put him on the level of like Tony Stark or Reed Richards or nothing like that, but they've always shown Spider-Man to hold his own knowledge-wise, even when it came to like how smart he is, what he can do, even with his powers. Like, people forget that his spider sense and his agility, he should be like Superman, where he should not be able to get hit unless somebody is faster than him. Let's say, like, unless you're like Venom, Carnage, one of the symbiotes, or like somebody who has super speed that can just instantly outclass Spider-Man and hit him, he should not be hit. Every time that they have a major fight scene in a comic book where you have different story arcs, if Spider-Man has a moment in there, they always make a point to show Spider-Man doing some amazing acrobatic stuff, or like using his spider sense to dodge a bunch of incoming fire and stuff, and people be like, oh shit, like I forgot you can do that shit. I wish that scene of the instant kill scene was him showcasing that in the MCU, because that's something we have not seen him do. His spider sense has not been a thing in the MCU, and I do not understand why. It's like they hint at it, like the scene in Infinity War when the hairs rose up on his arm and stuff like that. It's like, okay, cool. It's like, okay, it's there, but like he doesn't ever do anything with it, I was kind of hoping as the movies go on and like that was gonna become a thing where it's like, okay, well, he just got his powers. He hasn't really learned everything about him yet. So, I mean, I'm hoping that's still gonna be a thing, but As the movies go on, it's like I'm not seeing that. As the movies go on, I'm seeing, and I was going to touch on this too, is I'm seeing Peter Parker become like Iron Man's pseudo son, and I'm not a fan of that. Like, it's cool that he has that relationship with Tony Stark. It's cool that he was like the driving focus behind Tony Stark, you know, wanting to bring everybody back, and him bringing him into the MCU and everything. That's cool. I love all of that. But the fact that it's all about Tony Stark, like, you know, I'm gonna go full circle with that. Peter Parker, it's like, oh, it's always about Tony Stark, and you know, like even in Far From Home trailer, they was like, you had a scene when Nick Fury asked them, oh, the world needs a new Iron Man, are you gonna step up? I'm like, Peter Parker can't step up to be fucking Iron Man in any way, shape, or form. At least in the MCU, at least in the comic books, he can be just maybe not just as smart, but he is smart enough to play on his level. In the movies, he's not. I wouldn't even call him a genius. He's like an average kid who may be somewhat smarter than the average. That's it. You know, he built his web shooters, built the, you know, I think they said he built his webbing in this from something else, but outside of that, he gets the suits from Tony Stark. He doesn't make them himself. He relies on them way too much. That ingenuity that Spider-Man would normally have, like, I can't beat this person. How do I gotta think of a way to beat him. And then he builds something that allows him to beat the bad guy at the end of the day. He just doesn't have that in the MCU at all. So it's just like, that's one thing that bugs me. It's just like, well, he's like if Iron Man had a Robin, like, that's what Spider-Man is. And that's not Spider-Man. That's not who the character is. Spider-Man, above all else, is his own hero. He doesn't need anybody. You know, he needs Mary Jane, Aunt May. You have to have Uncle Ben dying, and his reason, with great power comes great responsibility, and that's it. Tony Stark in the comic books, don't get me wrong, they're cool, they're friends, they know each other, they respect each other, but they don't have that relationship like they have in the MCU, where it's like, oh, look, you know, you're my mentor, I look up to you and stuff like that. Like, no, they're both men that stand on their own 2 feet. You know, Iron Man has his company and everything, what he does, built the Iron Man suits, started the Avengers and all of that. He's more respected. And then you got Spider-Man, who's like the grounded level guy, who stands on his feet, who has resolve that's probably only comes in second to, let's say, like Captain America. And he's his own hero in every way, shape, and form. He doesn't need a suit given to him by Iron Man. He doesn't need to be Iron Man's pseudo son and to get all of his hand-me-downs. You know, it's like he doesn't need none of that. He's his own person. And I hate the way that the MCU is driving that relationship and driving Spider-Man to be that. I hate that with a passion. But I mean, it is what it is. They're trying to put butts in seats. I wish that they would make Spider-Man his own hero. Maybe they don't want to do it that far because they got licensing issues and rights, because technically they're using him in the MCU, but Sony still has the movie rights to his character, so maybe they don't want to make or set his character to be one specific way, because then once the contract is up and once they probably take him out of the MCU, you know, they still have to have him be that way. Maybe they don't want to set none of that in stone, because then that messes up what Sony may want to do in the future. I don't know, but it's just bugging me every time I see Spider-Man on screen and they, you know, have those interactions, and about how you see a lot of Iron Man's co-stars and stuff in Spider-Man movies and stuff like that. I mean, granted, I'm glad that they're there, because then you would have nothing but high schoolers and shit in Spider-Man's movie, and I hate all of them, so I would say maybe it's a blessing and a curse that they're in the Spider-Man movies, but I hate every one of those fucking high school characters. I wish that they'd have just jumped into Spider-Man and he was like 18, coming out of college or going in college, and said fuck all that high school shit. But they're trying to mimic a lot of the cartoons and stuff that's coming out now, which is, Disney went real kiddie with all the cartoons, and I hate them. Everything they did after Spectacular Spider-Man sucks ass. I'm just gonna say that. Everything else they're doing, like with the Avengers, I thought was great. Earth's Mightiest Heroes was like one of the greatest cartoons I ever seen. It was like, I will compare that to Justice League. And then you had the Avengers. Like, once the movies became big, they canceled that and made the Avengers cartoon, and that's decent. That's not on Earth's Mightiest Heroes level, but it's decent. When it came to Spider-Man, they canceled Spectacular Spider-Man, and then they made what was it, Amazing Spider-Man or something, whatever, the Disney one that follows the movies. That's incredibly kiddie, and it's just it's garbage in the worst way. But I mean, if I was a kid 9 years old watching the cartoon, I wouldn't care about none of the stuff I care about now as an adult. But from a story and consistency standpoint, it's just ass to me. So I haven't seen it, but I watched all the, like I said, like in the beginning, like I've been a fan of all of this stuff throughout the years. Like I've seen all the Avengers cartoons, Spider-Man cartoons, X-Men. I've seen everything. And it's just like, so to see this movie and to see certain characters done certain ways, it's like I have to say it. Like, I knew this video was gonna be like an hour and a half because I knew I was gonna have to say a whole lot. But like I said about Spider-Man, to get back on topic with that, Spider-Man, like I said, he needs to be his own person. And right now, I'm not seeing them doing that, so that bugs me. I'm just trying to think of anything else that I could think of in the last little bit of this commentary here, but how they ended the movie, I will say this. Besides them sticking to their guns and saying everybody is coming back and they're staying with that 5-year gap, like nothing got erased, wiped, or warped, when it came to reality like that, is a good sign. I like where they're bringing in the multiverse, because according to Far From Home in the trailer, Mysterio's like, hey, you know, this is the 616 universe and things like that. In the comics, the Marvel MCU, I think, was it like 199999999. That was like the number designation for the MCU. All the multiverses have a number designation. So like the 616, that's the Marvel comic book universe that you read about. If you go pick up a comic book right now, that's the main default storyline for all of the characters. Avengers, X-Men, Spider-Man, whatever. It all happens in 616. You know, that's the main continuity, so to speak. So when he mentioned that in the trailer, I was like, shouldn't he said 1999999? Because the MCU is a designation in the comic books, you know? Why would they just have it be, oh, this is the 616 because this is the movies and the comic books is just like, no. You know, if you're gonna have continuity, stick to that shit. You know? So I think they kind of I'm hoping Mysterio is lying in that, and they're just, you know, either gonna give it a different designation in the movie, or maybe he's not from the multiverse and, you know, he's from somewhere else and just saying that he's from the multiverse just so he can further his own goals, whatever that may be. I will say this though, in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they just had the first episode drop of the new season, and it looks like you have an evil Coulson and a couple of other people coming from like a parallel universe. So maybe that, you know, because I thought the new season of that was not gonna play into anything that's been going on in the movies. Usually it does. Like when something major goes down in the movies, shit happens in the TV show, at least in that. Maybe in Netflix, not so much, but in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show, like when Captain America took out Hydra, or took down Hydra and so-called S.H.I.E.L.D., you know, that affected their whole TV show. because they're supposed to be S.H.I.E.L.D. So so with Endgame, I thought I read something where it was like, oh, we're gonna do our own thing, they're not gonna play into anything. But then when I seen Coulson come back, so I'm like, oh, okay, so they're doing parallel universes too. Makes a whole lot of sense if the MCU is going with the multiverse and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that becomes more of a thing. Don't know if it is or not. But it's one thing that I hope they do more of, because then that's a way that they can bring in the X-Men, Fantastic Four, that kind of sort of thing. If they could just bring them in from another universe and establish them in the MCU and just say like, oh, look, we can't go back. We don't know how to go back to our home universe, so we're stuck here. X-Men, you can't really do that with. But at least with the Fantastic Four, that's an easy way of rolling them in. Since that's kind of half of what they did. They explored cosmic events, parallel universes, all of that kind of sort of stuff. Good way that they could roll them in and kind of, you know, tie a bow on that if they wanted to. But outside of that, trying to think of something else I can talk about here. Let's talk about Captain America to kind of wrap up this commentary, because I know we're pushing an hour and 10 minutes here. So, well, Captain America and Steve Rogers and his fuckery with the timeline. At the end of the movie, those of you who don't know or who haven't seen it yet, spoiler alert, given this video and everything, we're like an hour in, but he goes back in the timeline and stays. And he, I guess, grows old, and then when they see him again, he passes the Captain America mantle to Falcon, which it would have went to Bucky, but he's already Winter Soldier and everything, so but they gave it to Falcon. If they want to stick to their universe, you can say that Falcon was more worthy, because let's be honest, Falcon wasn't nobody's favorite in the MCU. So it's give him something better to do. You have him as Captain America in the comic books right now, so it kind of fits with what they're doing. So it makes a whole lot of sense. But by Steve going back in time and just staying in the past, according to the rules that they set in Endgame, that should have made a separate timeline. Because if he went back in time and stayed with Peggy, and I'm assuming they had a life together or what have you, then he should be in that future timeline, not the MCU anymore. So if he did, how did he get back? And if this is, let's say, because they couldn't travel to multiple timelines, they can only go back in time and create a new one. Branch universe theory. So if, let's say, he went and came back, how did he get back? Why is time not completely different? Or, why didn't the events, why did they happen the same way? He should have been able to come back to the future, so to speak. But if that's a different Steve Rogers, well, where did he come from? So it's like there's a lot of questions that they leave that on, because according to the rules and stuff that they said in their movie, it's one of the things where it's like, okay, well, he shouldn't have been able to do that. And if he did do that, the timeline should be fucked. Because if, let's say, he went back in time, he stayed, and let's say he grew up and stayed with Peggy or whatever, that affects her genetic line. So her aunt, Sharon, the moment, the one Steve had a thing for in Winter Soldier and Civil War and all that, that should be affected. All of the Marvel stuff that they pretty much based, Captain America's not around, we have to develop another super soldier serum. All of that should not have happened if he stayed. So you have Hulk wouldn't be around, because that was a derivative of that. Abomination was a derivative of that. There's a lot of stuff that played into, like, Captain America's not around, we need another super soldier. A lot of stuff was driven off of that. So if he goes back and, let's say, he was never frozen, then that affects everything in the MCU going forward, as far as S.H.I.E.L.D., the military, the Incredible Hulk, and tons of other stuff. Now, if he went back in time, let's say he went back in time, technically there's two versions of himself. Let's say he went back in time after he was frozen. So then he goes back in time, the world thinks Captain America is dead, he's hiding out and stuff like that, so people don't know who he is. So now he's with Peggy Carter. That affects what happens in her TV show, which is the past of the MCU still. They had to deal with some, like, black hole shit and scientists and stuff fucking with shit. So now that affects everything that happened with her, which is also the past of the MCU. So now, if she wasn't there, then Earth would have got ate up by that other dimensional black hole that she had to deal with back in, like, the 40s. So why didn't that happen? You see what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot that Steve Rogers, by him going and staying, fucks up completely. Now, if it were me and I was, making the movie and stuff, I would have him go back in time. Let's say have him stay for a little bit and then come back. And then, and leave everything else the same. Let's say he goes back in time, has that dance with Peggy Carter, right? And then he, comes back to the present. That way, it's not really changing anything. They kind of get closure together. It's kind of like something we want them to see. Like we want to see him get that dance. But then it's like, you know, you're not changing the timeline or the future or nothing like that because you're still going to be gone. I would have rather have them seen that. But what I'm guessing, if it was me, I think that they may take that into a TV show, because you can explain like, oh, what happened to Captain America when he went back. Maybe he went on a whole series of adventures that we just don't know about, that they can make a whole TV show about, and then have him show up at the end of Endgame. Like, for him, it's been like, you know, his whole life. But let's say he was, you know, the process of him taking the stones back, he had to have met Red Skull again for the second time. So that could have been like a thing. It could have been a whole adventure of just him taking the stuff back and coming into problems along the way, and him having to go back in time and put those things back in those specific spots. And, you know, maybe Loki disappearing in Endgame may have fucked shit up with him. You know, who knows? They could make a whole different story about all of that stuff, and then that answers all of the questions. That what I'm saying, like, you know, maybe they figure out a way not to mess up the timeline and have him stay there and things like that. But as far as right now, it goes against the rules that they set up and explain 2 different times in the movie. So something's messed up. You know, they can't just have everything be the same without explaining it for down the line in the future. But who knows? But anyways, fellas, that's just been my whole spiel about Endgame. One more thing I will say, I wish that they gave Black Widow a little bit of a send-off, because I thought that when I seen that ending scene with them giving the funeral for Tony Stark and everything, I was like, number one, why is the kid from Iron Man 3 there? Like, you knew the man for like 2 days, and he didn't really change anything in your life. So why the fuck are you there? Number one. Friends and family only, you know, you're not one of them. And 2, why wasn't that like a co-funeral thing with Tony Stark and Black Widow? You know, I thought that was kind of fucked up. I'm just saying, somebody that was a part of your family essentially died. Yeah, they had the little moment earlier in the movie, but that was like, okay, look, we feel sad, but look, the mission comes first. We still got to do this shit. You know, we're gonna have a funeral after we're done. You know, but it's like that funeral, they could have had 2 pictures up there, like Tony Stark and Natasha Romanoff. They could have had them both up there. They just said, "Oh fuck, Natasha." I was like, "Oh, that's wrong as shit," but that's just something I thought of when I was seeing it. I was like, "That's not right." But anyways, fellas, hope you guys have enjoyed hearing me ramble off for an hour and 17 minutes and 45 seconds right now. Damn, it's been a long time. But hopefully I've kept you guys entertained at least somewhat here, and I just wanted to get all of my thoughts in there about Endgame and everything like that. So I don't know, maybe I'll break this up into parts, but I'm probably just gonna upload it as one entire video. But if you guys want to see me talk about anything else MCU related, or any movie, comic book, or anything in general, really, even stuff outside of entertainment media, please let me know down in the comments below. My name is Denonu, and I'm the man with the biggest and the most blackest privilege on YouTube. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.